What's up, Laker fans? Welcome to the Laker Film Room podcast. I'm Pete, joined by Darius, and the Lakers got a little bit more bad news. Christian Wood had to have another surgery on his knee. He'll be reevaluated in 8 weeks, and putting the Lakers now, by my count, down to 9 guys, D, that I'm like, I feel pretty good about them in a game. And 2 of them are Max Christie and Dalton Connect, who either haven't done it at all in the NBA or haven't done it very much. So the Lakers have a very thin margin for error to start the season, D, in an environment where you have a new coach trying to implement a new system. We talked a little bit about AD's comments at Team USA saying, hey, we're not going to get this all at once, right? We haven't played in an offense that's like this, and it's going to take some time to implement. I would argue that there are higher leverage points of the season than others. And for this Lakers team, I think the start of this season is unusually high leverage for the start of a season, because I think that they could sort of get caught behind the 8 ball in ways that has happened the last couple of years where, yes, the Lakers played much better once they inserted Rui into the starting lineup, but we also had Spencer Dinwiddie. It moved Taurean Prince into his natural role, and he played very well at that once he was in the role that he should have been in all along. He's gone now, and we're expecting a rookie to step up and step in for that. And so this is a high leverage start to the season, I think, D, where there's not a lot of room for error in a very competitive West. So talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on and reaction to the Wood injury and just kind of this idea where the Lakers don't have a great deal of room for error right now.
Yeah, so let's start with Wood, because Wood is an interesting figure on this roster and with the team. He's one of the 3 players by my count that was signed to a minimum deal last summer. And then in order to entice him to sign that minimum deal, was given a player option. And Wood was the first reportedly player to opt in to his player option for this season. I think it would be fair to say that Wood had overall a disappointing season with the Lakers, which is one reason why you opt in to a veteran minimum deal. I thought he was actually okay, or to be expected, like maybe even a little bit above expected, like defensively. I thought he was really good on the backboards and helped solidify things there. But I thought offensively, which is where he's made his money in his career, he underperformed. He didn't shoot the ball very well. I thought his decision-making was spotty. And I thought in general, he did not move in the way you'd expect him to move around the court. Like, he wasn't really a lob threat. He didn't show much burst offensively. And Wood's a player who's scored 20 points a game, and you don't score 20 points a game in this league looking the way that Wood looked last season. And so I thought Hayes outperformed Wood last season. That said, this isn't my argument, so I'm not going to make this argument for me, but I'll make it anyway just right now to kick back to you about Wood. There's an argument to be made that because Wood underperformed in the way that he did, that there's a lot more meat on the bone for Christian Wood to get to, particularly offensively, and a bounce back season in some regard, like not all the way back to where he was before, but playing closer to the level that he could offensively could be a real boon for the Lakers this season. And projecting him into the competition for big man minutes or even forward minutes, not necessarily just center minutes, but forward minutes as well, could be a way to rebalance out some of the Lakers roster stuff and put them more into the quote unquote natural state that we would want them, that you and I, but I think several other fans would want them to play into as a bigger, more physical team that is good on the glass, can protect the paint, but still doesn't lose much, if anything, and in some ways gains things offensively. And Wood could be a figure in that regard in pushing the Lakers in that direction. Again, this isn't necessarily my argument, but it's an argument that can be made, and I think fairly effectively, like if that's your viewpoint of things.
Wood is a key figure if the Lakers want to play 2 big lineups, especially with Vando out. And I argue with basketball people about this, about the idea of, can you play 2 non-shooting bigs next to each other? Yes, I think you can. It's harder, and it is not using the same principles of a lot of 5-out type of stuff. Like, it's just a different way to play, but I do think that you can do that. However, it is much easier if at least one of the two bigs that you're playing can knock down threes. And so that is one of the aspects where Wood certainly underperformed, but he at least has the capability of that and actually a fairly long career of shooting 37% from three. So it's not totally unreasonable to be like, hey, Wood in a different system, in a different environment, it can have more success. But in the broader view of the team, he really hurts the team's ability to play two bigs at the same time. And so when I think of his injury in context with Vando's injury, the big kick that I was on toward the end of last season was get a rebound. Just watching games, just get a freaking rebound really all year. And I thought that was our core fundamental problem. And we've now lost two of our better rebounders amongst our role players. Really, we've got AD, but Hayes isn't a good rebounder, and that's the main area to me where Wood really outpaces Hayes. I think there are ways around it. We played basically with this group toward the end of the year, with the exception of Dinwiddie and Prince, of course. But this was basically the crew we had because Vando and Wood were out at the end of last year too. And we improved on the boards, but it is an area of concern I have.
I would argue Hayes is a better rebounder than Rui.
I agree. But the trade-off you get is that he cannot space at all, whereas Rui is like a three-level guy that's going to kick your ass on the baseline and beat mismatches, gives you a lot of offensive value that Jackson doesn't.
Well, that's the whack-a-mole nature of role players, and Rui's a higher-level role player for sure, but there are trade-offs in lineup stuff. And so I would argue that one of the reasons why you were banging your head against the wall, like, go get me a rebound, is that a lot of the team's players in general, especially the guys who were rotation level players, aren't good rebounders or weren't, right? Taurean Prince, Rui, and then Vando's out. And then when you start to look at your guards, none of the guards that played were really good rebounders either. Max Christie was a good rebounder, but he didn't play. And it's not like you're looking at Spencer Dinwiddie or Gabe Vincent or even Cam Reddish.
Every one of those guys have unusually low rebounding rates. I would argue it's a blind spot in the roster construction and has been for a couple of years that, like, if you put a bunch of guys next to each other that struggle getting rebounds, guess what? You're not going to be a good rebounding team no matter how great Anthony Davis is.
100%. And then you tack on top of that LeBron's averaging like 7 or 8 rebounds a game, but LeBron's not the rebounder he was. And how could he be? He's freaking about to be 40 years old. Like, looking at LeBron and being like, go get me more rebounds.
We cannot rely.
Like, come on, man.
We can, and this is as we go forward in this podcast, it will be a critical mistake if the Lakers rely on LeBron and AD for the physical, athletic, motor stuff. They can do it, of course, but if they are the guys who just hold that aspect of the Lakers up and nobody else on the floor is really contributing toward that, they're going to really struggle early on.
You can't, to me in general, man, like, LeBron and AD are unique in this way, in that they are such well-rounded players that they can do everything well. And they're actually rarish in the superstar world to be like, oh, yes, you can do absolutely everything on both sides of the ball. But I think that it's a mistake in general to say we need our star players to fill in the gaps. That's what role players are really for, to me. Like, just like it's why I also think that it's a flaw to say, well, as a role player, we're going to actually rely on you to be a high-level offensive contributor all the way through the playoffs. Teams that have used that model of like, oh, you're our bench scorer. And so we expect you as a bench scorer to continue to produce at a fairly high level all the way through the finals. It's just like, good luck.
This is Mike's Lou Williams argument, right? Where it's like, he's going to get buckets, but you're going to eventually hit a point of serious basketball and everyone locks in where maybe they're not that anymore. And then the weaknesses really shine through.
Yeah, like the Lou Williams, the Jordan Clarksons, like those are really good players. Jamal Crawford, I'm talking about guys who have won like 6 Man of the Year awards like multiple times specifically because this is something that they're actually really good at. But at the highest level and in the highest leverage moments, like there's a reason why those guys make between mid-level and lower level I don't know, $20 million a year sort of guys, and not the dudes who make $35 or $40 million a year, right? Because those are the guys that it's just like, no, there's a stability in your offense that is going to be there night after night after night. And so losing Wood to me, Pete, is an interesting thing in that personally, I was not ready to rely on Christian Wood.
I agree.
I was not projecting him into a critical role.
Well, I was somewhat wondering, though, if there was going to be a camp battle between Wood and Hayes, because I know a lot of people prefer Wood over Hayes and would, given a choice between the two, pick him. I would argue that the way that an underrated part of how the second part of last year went was that switch too. Wood stopped playing after the deadline, and Hayes is a better role player, in my opinion, in that he does very specific things. Wood is more generally good. Like, he can hit a way broader variety of shots, more skills. You were talking about this earlier, and Hayes is much more limited, but Hayes is better at being a lob threat than anything that Christian Wood is good at on offense, right? So it locks you into being a more specific thing. But I think it makes the Lakers better on offense. And so let's take a break here, come back, keep going.
A way that I would say it, Pete, is that Wood could do 20 or 25 different things on a basketball court, but on a scale of 1 to 10, on any of those, he's maybe not higher than a 7. And most of them are in between like 3 and 6.
Yeah.
Right. And Jackson Hayes could probably do like 8 things on a basketball court. And maybe the one thing that he does well is like an 8 or a 9, like as a downhill finish above the rim dude. Like,
yeah, as a lob threat, there aren't a lot of guys who are more potent lob threats in the league than Hayes. There's way more to basketball than that. But
yes,
just at specifically that thing, he's a formidable guy.
And so it's just like the 8 things that Hayes can do, if 2 of those are in between 3 and 6, and then one of them is a 9, and the other ones are in between like 5 and 7, it's just like, okay, you clearly don't have the spectrum of skills in your bag, but the few things that you do, you do them overall better than the 25 different things that Christian Wood can actually do. Now, that diversity and the ability to be sort of like a go-to player can be super useful over the course of an 82-game season. I think it makes him a more versatile player and someone who can plug into different types of lineups. And that idea of playing 2 big lineups, Wood's ability to be that inside player to sort of like flip-flop with Anthony Davis. Like, oh, I could spot up in the corner, or I could be a pick and roll player. Oh, I could roll to the hoop and I can pop. Oh, you can post me up and I can ISO from the perimeter, or I can like be a deep post threat and I can score against smaller guys. There's so many things that Wood could in theory do, but that requires a certain amount of investment in Christian Wood that I was not ready to invest anymore. Like I'd seen enough personally. And I'm just like, look, if you're not a defensive player, even though he was good on the glass, and your offense is not living up to its billing in these critical ways, well, then I'd rather just play the dude who does 5 different things well enough for me. That said, I want to pivot to the high leverage part of the season and these initial games that you were talking about, because that's the other part of this, and it is linked to Wood. Because Wood, for all of the flaws I just laid out, he's a viable NBA rotation player. If the Lakers signed him as a guy who they thought could be a 6th or a 7th man, but he's really a 9th, 10th, or 11th man, those guys still have the ability to come in and impact the basketball game positively for you. And if he's not available, then, and now you add him to the group of dudes who we think are not going to be helpful really at all to start the season, then you are looking at 7 dudes who you know can play, an 8th dude in Max Christie, who is just like, yeah, I think he can. Mm-hmm. And he showed me enough to believe that he will, but will he actually? That's not an affirmative answer. And I'm with you on believing in Dalton Knecht. Brian Windhorst is a guy who often says, though, you cannot rely on rookie. It's very rare that rookies contribute to winning basketball. Like, rookies typically do not help you win, but projecting him into a slot where you're sort of relying on him to be useful in that way, it's a tricky thing, but like, I want to do it too. So I'm with you there with Knecht.
Knecht specifically, the Lakers have regular season problems that they have to solve before they can get to solving the, hey, you can't rely on a rookie here type of problem. That's the higher levels of basketball. I think Dalton Knecht can contribute right away in an 82-game season. And now there's going to, of course, be an adjustment process and all of that, but I think he can be a very helpful part of the bench units this year. And so getting there, and that's part of how I think the Lakers can make up what they've lost on the boards relative to last year too. The one area where there's a definitive upgrade going from Dinwiddie and Prince to Max and Knecht getting those minutes. Obviously Max was on the team, but I mean actually being in the rotation, is Max and Knecht are way better rebounders from their position. And not only were we a bad rebounding team last year, where we were really bad was if the ball hit the back of the rim or caromed out to anywhere that was outside of AD's incredible radius, right? But if that ball was bouncing over his head, we were losing those battles over and over and over again. So having a guy playing at the 2 spot, at the 3 spot, that can drop down and help gobble up those ones that bounce out to the dotted line underneath the free throw line or to the free throw line. If you notice, a lot of threes, when they miss, that's always the rule, is that it bounces out to around 15 feet away. So watch this. As you watch NBA games, you'll see a lot of where the ball bounces out to, it'll land right around the free throw line just like half the time. It's crazy. And so that's an important area that we were just really one of the worst Laker teams I've ever seen, D. And so that is an area that I think that this kind of shift in the team can help. It can help them be smaller while still being effective. You got a board if you want to play small.
Rebounding is so critical, and losing Wood hurts there, and Vando's uncertainty hurts there. In zeroing back in, though, to who can you rely on, and this is where camp is going to be super important, because I'm totally throwing out Cam Reddish and JHS as being, you can do anything to help us at all.
Can we talk Cam a little bit?
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. So please jump in here.
Well, I don't want to act like that November that he had didn't exist.
Totally.
Right? He was very helpful for us in that November. He got hurt and then never got back on track, really the entirety of the rest of the season. Now, this is not uncommon. If you look at his games played, some of those are DNPs for sure, but he's had difficulty getting through 82. My broader thoughts on Cam are, if he just needs to be able to do that consistently to be able to really find a role, but he's also just I think, a terrible off-ball offensive player. And it's really difficult to find an offensive role for him, in that he came up as a guy that he was the man on all of his teams and the guy that you gave the ball to. Great size and athleticism, can handle the rock. And at lower levels of basketball, he was the guy, that was the job that he did. And so the version of Cam Reddish to me that works out in the NBA is a 3-and-D type of guy, where he's a really good on-ball defender, can chase guys around screens. Really one of the better guys in the league, I think, at kind of navigating screens and slithering over the top and staying attached. Like, he's really fun to watch in that respect. And that's a highly useful skill. If you can do just that and just be competent at a job on the offensive end, you can play a long time in the NBA if you've got the physical tools that he has. But it's really that off-ball, and if you have one guy that's really bad on offense, and now mind you, there may be people who push back on this idea that he's but I see him make the wrong decision over and over and over again when attacking closeouts, or just shot pass decisions where it's like, man, if you don't get it by now, I'm not sure you're going to. And so that's kind of where I'm at with Cam, but I always certainly understand why people are like, no, I really like Cam.
So Cam Reddish wasn't just the man, Pete. He was the best high school player in the country as a senior. He was the number one prospect. The number one prospect.
He wasn't stand in the corner
when he went to Duke. So all of his instincts are geared towards, for however long he played basketball before he before he got to the NBA, all of his instincts were geared towards, okay, I'm going to be the man here. And one of the reasons why his lone season at Duke was not as successful, I think, and this is from a very like surface level view, is that was the year that they had Zion and RJ Barrett as well. And it's just like, okay, well, Zion's clearly the best player on this team. And he went number 1 overall. RJ Barrett was drafted 3rd or 4th in his own draft. So he also proved to be a better college player than Cam Reddish. And so this guy went into the season looking like the very best player and then came out of it looking like, no. That's actually not true. You're the 3rd best player on your own team. And so it's very hard to get those instincts out of a player, those shot pass, what do I do next to move the ball? It's like, imagine if over the course of a 4-year period, you went from someone who was looked at as like a Tracy McGrady, and you're now being asked to be Matisse Thybulle, which is the player that you just described.
Yeah.
That's Matisse Thybulle. It's the guy who's not very good on offense, but a disruptive sort of like, oh, you could be really good at this on defense, an on-ball guy who could chase off of screens, can get over the top, can contest shots, good wheels, can move around, really fluid athlete, long. But on offense, you've got to be able to like hit the corner 3 and like move the ball when it's time. And defenses aren't really going to respect you very much. Thybulle's going to have an 10-year NBA career. Will Cam Reddish? I think a part of it is if he adapts to being Matisse Thybulle. The injury stuff to me, though, is the bridge to whether or not this is actually going to work at all. If you get a fully healthy season from Cam Reddish and it actually doesn't work out for him, that's when it's just like, you got to be out on him. Mm-hmm. And the ability for him to be disruptive on offense, or disrupted on offense. Yeah, he's that too. Disruptive on defense and be, I guess, a solid find your way on offense. Like he could be good in transition. He could do this other stuff. The thing about Cam is though, Pete, is it's like his hands aren't very good offensively. Mm-hmm. And there are little parts of his game that chip away at his effectiveness. And that's why the idea of how many minutes are you going to give Cam Reddish is a tricky thing, because the way that he can help you like he did last November, that also came at a time where it's just like, oh, look at Cam Reddish. He's hitting like 45% of his threes. And it's right. Like, it was a perfect storm for him on both sides of the ball. So let's go to break here, because when we come back, I think we're hitting a point in the conversation that we've hit a bunch of times before, which is like, oh, the Lakers, they don't have enough dudes, but these are the dudes they got. And so how do you get through this beginning part of the season with the injury questions that they have? And honestly, still wondering about LeBron and AD and like what it's going to look like for them at the start of the year after a long summer.
So I think we have enough dudes. I think we're right at that margin where if we lose another guy who's important, I think that's going to have cascading effects on the team. But we have enough to win early on in the season. These guys have played together. I really keep focusing, and I would love to do a whole pod on the Gabe and Max Connect trio, because Gabe's a question mark too, in that how is he going to be able to bounce back from last year, which was a lost season for him, in what I think is going to be an offense that's more conducive to what he did well in Miami. That can he bounce back and sort of at least get up to the level of what Dinwiddie provided? Because that's one thing. We didn't have a backup point guard for a good portion of the year where we were a 500 team. And can Gabe just play at the level that Dinwiddie did? Because that really helped having a competent guy there. And so there are ways, I think, to work around where the Lakers are, but you really only need 9 guys to be able to win even early on, even with LeBron and AD in the lower gears than they'll be later on. And AD, I think, has carried us in early portions of the season in ways where I don't necessarily want to lump him in with LeBron entirely in this respect, and that he can have these really great stretches. And so I want to start talking a little bit, D, about what the Lakers need to do to account for the losses that they've had of these two guys, both Vando and Wood, who can get a rebound, 6'9" plus type of guys that on a team that wasn't that big in the first place. We only have two bigs, D. And so I think there are personnel and schematic stuff that you really need to work around. So where's your head at with that?
I honestly would be concerned about them going into the season with Wood injured and just AD and Hayes as the only other bigs that are on the roster.
Agreed.
Right? I know that Castleton has a two-way, and I know that they signed
Kyler Kelly. This is going to be part of the. I think he should get the other two-way because he's a shot blocker. That to me is the biggest thing we need out of that spot. This is the argument I've been making for a minute. Is like if we find ourselves in case of emergency break glass, more than anything, we need a guy that can protect the rim, and Kelly can do that.
Did he sign Exhibit 10?
Yeah, he's on an E10.
Okay. So I'm concerned in general. So you're talking about an E10 dude who ultimately is going to try to grab a two-way from a player who's been on a two-way for 2 years or would be for his second year and hasn't really broken through yet. Center was a position we've talked about a lot, and I waffle between saying, hey, it'd be nice to have a guy who makes $10 million there, right? And then also thinking about, well, yeah, but when the Lakers won the title, they actually paid two dudes who were on vet minimums who actually played well enough, who outpaced their salary. And I'd much rather try to find the dudes who outpace their salary rather than the guys who were paid appropriately, from a resource allocation standpoint.
And I totally think that that's been the strategy that they've tried to employ.
Yes.
All I would argue is that if you actually look around the NBA and you do this exercise of like, okay, who are these bigs who fit this description? It's actually very thin. And I think we're at a point where you actually need to allocate more resources to that particular spot if you want a halfway decent player.
Well, centers don't make that end anymore. Like the only ones who do make that basically can't play or are smaller or they're just not as good as they need.
When you say make that, you mean vet min?
Yes, I mean the vet minimum. Like Plumlee might be the last guy who signed as the vet minimum. He's in Phoenix, and he'll probably outplay that. Every other guy that I would have wanted for the Lakers who I thought, oh, he could be a candidate for the vet min, they got more than that. So Andre Drummond got more than that. Goga Bitadze got more than that. And I'm just like, okay, well, if these dudes are going to go for, Bitadze went for like 8 million or 9 million, and Drummond, I think, got the tax MLE or like the room exception. Like he got that sort of money, like $5 million a year. It's like, okay, well, this fictional vet min player who could come in and back up and play next to Anthony Davis, like, oh, that's a pipe dream.
Yeah, 2020 Dwight was kind of a unique set of circumstances, amongst which was Boogie getting hurt, right? Remember, Dwight wasn't the plan in the first place.
Well, Boogie was also a vet min guy, and it's just like those players seemingly are no longer out there in that way, right? Like they're young players who are on their rookie deals, and so technically they make more than that already. So there's a lot of guys now. It's just like, oh, well, you make $5 million a year. Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a guy who can be signed to a vet minimum and isn't upsetting your roster construction in any way, shape, or form because you're not allocating real resources to him. In bringing it back to the idea of, do you have enough guys? I think the Lakers do have enough guys, except in this one case. Like, I would just love to have another big guy, but it's tricky because at some point, Vando is going to come back, and at some point, Wood is going to come back. Vando, to me, is way more important than Wood. But like I said, there's a universe where people are arguing, well, Wood's actually better than Hayes. He should get the minutes. And I'm of the mind, well, I think Hayes should play. So even if he's not the primary backup, I think the things that he does are valuable to this roster, which is like run hard, play above the rim, like be a guy who can play in transition and can catch a lob and is like pretty good in DHO situations. There's stuff to like there. The question still comes back to me, though, of like, okay, they have this question at the big spot and they have a question to me at like backup wing guard. And those are two kind of critical questions that like how do you actually expect them to play well at the start of the season as a cohesive unit with questions in the reserve spots like this? It seems to put a lot of pressure then on your top 5 dudes, your starting 5. It's like a lot of pressure on Rui and D'Lo and Austin. Like, you really need those dudes to be high-level dudes then, right?
Very much so. And I think that the nature of the guys that the Lakers lost sets the Lakers off on a course, if they want to be good early in the season, that they're going to have to play a certain way because they don't have that type of size beyond, right? They only have the 2 bigs. I'm with you on the whole broader discussion that we've talked about of acquiring a backup big. That's not happening right now. Maybe we get a flurry of deals right before camp starts. Like last year, I do wonder if that's sort of a new trade deadline-ish of the offseason, right? It's sort of the pressure point of like, if you really wanted to make a deal this offseason, now's the last call because you're going to have to do it after camp starts and all of that. And so this sets us off, I think, in a direction where I think the team can be great on the offensive end. And then it's going to really have to play a containment, coordinated team style of defense in order to survive until they get a little bit of size back. We'll talk about that next time. But until then, you've been listening to Laker Film Room Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.
James has got it in low to McHale. McHale wants to turn. He's double teamed. Just pass out in front. Broken up by Worthy. Tip to Magic. Worthy dies on his belly. Magic scores.
There's Magic got it. Magic fires. It's good. They will. Lakers win the game. The Lakers win the game. Rebound of Lonnie. 3 seconds left. Van Exel to win it. It's on the way. Good.
Kobe Bryant, 48 points, 16 rebounds.
Shot with his 8th block shot that ties an NBA Finals record.
A lot of Laker fans sticking around for this.
You're seeing something that's very rare indeed. A Laker to get MVP chance
in Boston. Of all places.
Are you kidding me?
Kobe. Hard to believe.
Are you kidding me? Unreal. Are you kidding me?
Lakers looking to push. Bryant spinning in the lane. Back for Gasol. Pretty pass. And it's back to a 3-point game.
Kobe Bryant picked up by Bell.
There's the move. 2, 1.
Listen.
Unbelievable.
For the victory.
It's over.
Shot clock now to 5. Bryant. Yes. And that was a little tap to Alvin Gentry.
Add insult to injury, Kobe. I mean, what a shot. I mean, you can't defend that. Are you kidding me?
2.1 seconds remaining. Denver a foul to give. Jokic trying to disrupt Rondo. He puts it in. Here's Davis, 4-3 in the win. Oh, it's good! Anthony Davis has won it for the Lakers! James again. Oh, he hits another one. LeBron James putting together a closing quarter against the Nuggets.
This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers conquer the bubble, and banner number 17 will soon hang in the rafters.